The day I received the call that would change my life, I was sitting in my cluttered office, surrounded by stacks of papers, old photographs, and half-finished projects. It was a typical Tuesday, but little did I know that my life was about to take a drastic turn. The phone rang and I picked it up, expecting another mundane query about one of my sculptures. Instead, a deep, gravelly voice on the other end said, "Gary, it's me. You won't believe what I've found." My heart skipped a beat. The voice belonged to my old friend, a collector of rare memorabilia. I knew he had a reputation for uncovering some of the most extraordinary artifacts, but this time his tone was different, urgent, and almost scared. "What is it?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. There was a long pause, and for a moment I thought the connection had been lost. Then he continued, "I've got a collection of letters, unpublished letters, written by Elvis Presley to a secret confidante." I nearly dropped the phone. "Elvis, are you serious?" "Dead serious," he replied. "These letters reveal a side of Elvis that no one has ever seen before. I need you to come over and take a look. You're the only one I trust with this." I didn't need any more convincing. I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door, my mind racing with possibilities. What could Elvis have written that was so important? What secrets could these letters hold? As I drove through the familiar streets of Minneapolis, my thoughts were a whirlwind. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, had always been a towering figure in popular culture. His music, his movies, and his larger-than-life persona had captivated millions. But the idea of him confiding in a secret confidante, sharing his deepest thoughts and fears, was almost too much to comprehend. I arrived at my friend's house, a sprawling Victorian mansion filled with artifacts and memorabilia from every era. He led me to a dimly lit room, filled with the scent of old books and musty paper. On a large oak table lay a stack of yellowed envelopes, each one sealed with wax and marked with Elvis's distinctive handwriting. I carefully opened the first envelope, my hands trembling. The letter inside was written in faded blue ink, the words almost illegible in places. But as I read, the handwriting became clearer, and the words began to form a picture of a man I had never known. "Dear friend," the letter began, "I don't know if I can keep this up much longer. The weight of it all is crushing me. No one understands what it's like to be me, to live in this constant state of scrutiny and expectation. I'm tired, so tired." My heart sank as I read on. The Elvis I knew from the media was a confident, charismatic performer. But the Elvis in these letters was a man in pain, struggling with the burdens of fame, the loss of loved ones, and the relentless pressure to perform. I looked up at my friend, my eyes wide with shock. "This is unbelievable. This can't be real." He nodded solemnly. "I know, but it is. I've had the letters authenticated. They're genuine, and there are hundreds more." I couldn't tear my eyes away from the letters. Each one was a window into a world I had never imagined. A world of secrets, of struggles, and of a man who was more human than anyone had ever dared to believe. That night, as I sat in my friend's study, reading through the letters, I knew that my life had changed forever. These letters were not just a treasure trove of historical value. They were a revelation. They were a call to uncover the truth about Elvis Presley, the man behind the legend. And I was determined to find out what those letters held. The drive to Carmen's ranch in the high desert was long and winding, with the sun setting behind us, casting long shadows across the dusty landscape. Gloria and I were nervous but excited, our minds buzzing with the mystery of the Elvis letters and the woman who had them. When we reached the ranch, a young man named Nathan, one of Carmen's lost boys, greeted us with a warm smile. "Welcome to Carmen's," he said, showing us around the back of the main building, which housed a dress shop and a restaurant. The dresses were a riot of colors and styles, some so bold and flamboyant that they seemed out of place in the quiet desert town. But they were Carmen's pride and joy, and she had a way of making even the most casual visitor feel special. Carmen herself appeared a few minutes later, her presence as soothing as a gentle breeze. She wore a flowing purple gown that shimmered as she moved, and her low, comforting voice immediately put us at ease. "My dears," she said, pulling us into a warm embrace, "I hope you enjoy my dresses. You can try them on if you like, but jeans are always appropriate on the ranch. Now, let's get you something to eat." Nathan led us up to the restaurant, which was empty except for one of the lost boys behind the bar. The food was delicious, a hearty steak dinner that made us feel like we were part of a family gathering. After dinner, Carmen noticed our tired faces and sent us off to our room. "Get some rest," she said. "We have a lot to talk about tomorrow." The next morning, Gloria and I woke up early, the desert air crisp and clean. We went for a walk, dodging cacti and scaring jackrabbits, and I jotted down my thoughts in my journal. When we returned, Nathan told us Carmen was ready to start the interviews. He led us to a cozy study where Carmen was waiting. She looked a bit frail, but her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Before we start," she said, "can I show you my island?" "Island?" I asked, confused. "What island?" Carmen unrolled a large map on the table and pointed to a small dot in the Pacific Ocean. "There it is, my Pacific Isle. It's for sale, and I'll own it as soon as the book is published and becomes a bestseller." I was stunned. "Carmen, you didn't tell me you were thinking of buying an island. What's the story behind it?" She reached into a drawer and pulled out more maps and photos. "This is what keeps me going, Gary. It's why I've been pushing so hard to get this book published. I don't have much time left, and I need to spend some time on my island before I go." I was taken aback. "Carmen, you didn't tell me you were ill. What's wrong?" She sighed, her eyes welling with tears. "Sometimes a person just knows. I've been feeling pain, and I don't have the energy I used to. But please, dear, help me get to my island." I felt a mix of emotions, concern, guilt, and a renewed sense of purpose. Carmen had become a dear friend, and I wanted to make her dream come true. "Of course, Carmen. We'll get this book published and you'll have your island." The following day, Easter Sunday, Carmen's house was filled with family and friends. The atmosphere was chaotic but joyful, with everyone pitching in to prepare the meal. The Lost Boys, despite their culinary missteps, managed to create a feast that brought everyone together. Gloria and I felt like we were part of this boisterous and loving family. Among the guests was Richard Henrik, a successful writer whose submarine thriller had been turned into a movie. He offered to help with the book once it was ready. "I'll make some introductions to publishers," he said. "We'll get this book out there." As the day wore on, I realized that the Elvis letters were more than just a project. They were a connection to a world of love, friendship, and dreams. Carmen's story was intertwined with Elvis's, and through her, I was uncovering a side of the king that I had never known. It was a journey that had led me to this remote ranch, where a woman with a heart of gold hoped to find her own piece of paradise. Easter at Carmen's ranch was a whirlwind of emotions. After the festive day, I finally had a chance to explore the house. I stepped into the living and dining rooms, and it felt like I'd walked into a shrine dedicated to Elvis. The walls were adorned with his likeness coasters, tumblers, calendars, ashtrays, napkins, placemats, and even mobiles. Every corner of the house had something with Elvis on it. My eyes were drawn to a life-size image of Elvis in his iconic Vegas jumpsuit, hand-painted on black velvet. There was also a large bust of Elvis with magical eyes that seemed to follow me wherever I moved. Even now, as I work on my book about Elvis, I sometimes feel those eyes watching me, urging me to finish the story. The next day, Carmen and I got back to work. I checked, and Elvis was still watching over us. Carmen Rayburn once told me, "Even today, when I think of Elvis, I think of fiery flamenco guitar music. That's because I can't think of Elvis without seeing the face of my best friend, Carmen Montez." Carmen Montez was the woman behind the secret letters Elvis wrote. She was more than just a pen pal. She was his confidante, the one he called Sis. They never met in person, but their bond was deep and spiritual. Carmen Montez knew Elvis's innermost thoughts and feelings, more so than many of his closest friends. Elvis's relationship with Carmen Montez was built on written letters. Through these letters, they shared the struggles and joys of their lives. Elvis confided in her about his hauntings, the betrayals he faced, and the physical and emotional scars that shaped his life. Carmen Montez became like a sister to him, someone he felt compelled to protect and nurture. Many people have written about Elvis, but it's hard to sort out the truth from the fiction. Priscilla Presley, his ex-wife, painted a picture of herself as sweet and understanding in her book, but is that the whole truth? Albert Goldman's books were sensational and one-sided, and other authors, like Red and Sonny West, had their own biases and motives. It's a challenge to find a balanced view of Elvis's life. Carmen Rayburn first met Carmen Montez in her boutique on Wilshire Boulevard. The shop was filled with vibrant, exotic clothing and jewelry. One slow morning, a woman walked in wearing a gown and necklace almost identical to Carmen Rayburn's. They introduced themselves and discovered they shared the same name. This chance encounter led to a lifelong friendship. Carmen Montez was born in Barcelona and moved to Hollywood as a young woman. She was strikingly beautiful and had a magnetic personality. She worked in the film industry, often as a dancer or extra, and made connections with actors, producers, and directors. Her charm and intelligence set her apart, and she quickly became a fixture in Hollywood's social scene. Carmen met George Raymontal at a party. George was charming and different from the other men she knew. He was a veteran who had served in World War II and had a passion for flying. They fell in love and got married in 1952. However, George's gambling habits strained their relationship, and after a car accident, Carmen began to reflect on her life. She felt a calling to something deeper and more meaningful. In 1966, they divorced but remained close friends. Carmen Montez found her spiritual calling and became an ordained minister in the Universal Church of the Master. She started a ministry to help people in the movie industry who were struggling with personal issues. Her ministry was successful, and she attracted many followers, including famous actors like Marlon Brando. Carmen's approach was sincere and down-to-earth, and she helped many people find peace and purpose in their lives. Through her ministry, Carmen Montez found a way to make a difference in the world. Her life before the accident had prepared her for this purpose, and she used her experiences and connections to spread a message of love and healing. Her friendship with Elvis was a key part of this mission, and their letters became a source of comfort and guidance for both of them. Carmen Rayburn sat in her room, surrounded by the items she had bought at the auction. She felt a strange mix of sadness and excitement as she looked at the old suitcase. It was the same one Carmen Montez had carried with her everywhere, the one she had brought to every visit, the one that held so many secrets. Carmen Rayburn decided it was time to open the suitcase. She lifted the lid, and the old musty smell filled the room. Inside, there were no piles of cash or old magazines. Instead, there was a stack of letters and envelopes. She picked up the first one. It was addressed to Carmen, and the closing read, "Love, Harry." Harry Belafonte, the charming Caribbean crooner, had written to her friend. She reached for another letter. This one was from Tom Jones, the passionate Welshman with the raw energy that had captivated American women. His letter ended with, "Love, Tom." Carmen Rayburn's hands trembled as she found more letters. One was from Marlon Brando, the enigmatic and handsome actor, signing off with Marlon, and then she found a pastel blue letter. It began with "Dear Sister," and ended with Elvis. As she read through the letters, Carmen Rayburn felt a wave of emotions. Each letter was a piece of history, a window into the lives of these famous men. They wrote about their struggles, their fears, and their hopes. Harry Belafonte talked about his deep spiritual connectedness and his commitment to civil rights. Tom Jones shared his thoughts on fame and the pressure of living up to expectations. Marlon Brando spoke about his feelings of isolation and the search for meaning. And Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, poured out his heart about his loneliness, his insecurities, and his love for Carmen Montez. Carmen Rayburn realized that these letters were more than just words on paper. They were a testament to the deep bond her friend had with these men. Carmen Montez had been more than just a listener. She had been their confidante, their support, and their friend. Reading the letters, Carmen Rayburn could almost hear their voices, feel their pain, and understand their struggles. The letters also brought back memories of the conversations she had had with Carmen Montez. She remembered the long nights they spent talking about Elvis, the times Carmen had cried, and the moments of joy and hope. Carmen Montez had carried the burdens of these men, and now, through the letters, those burdens were being shared with Carmen Rayburn. Carmen Rayburn knew what she had to do. She had to finish the book project she and Carmen Montez had started. She had to tell Elvis's story, not just for herself, but for the world. These letters were the key to unlocking the true Elvis, the man behind the fame and the legend. She began sorting through the letters, organizing them by date and topic. She read and reread each one, making notes and trying to piece together the story. It was a labor of love, and she knew it would take time. But she was determined to honor her friend's memory, and the trust these men had placed in Carmen Montez. As she worked, Carmen Rayburn felt a sense of purpose. She was no longer just a recording secretary. She was a guardian of these men's legacies. She was the one who would help the world understand the true Elvis Presley, the real Harry Belafonte, and the authentic Tom Jones. The letters became her lifeline, a connection to the past and a bridge to the future. With each word, she felt closer to her friend and the men who had trusted her. And as she wrote, she knew that their stories would live on, forever entwined with the legacy of Carmen Montez. Nearly 100 letters from Elvis Presley were scattered on Carmen Rayburn's desk, and over 200 more were tucked away in a suitcase, waiting to be read. Each letter held a piece of Elvis's life, but they were like puzzle pieces that didn't fit together easily. Some letters had shocking stories and secrets, but putting them all together to make sense was going to be a tough job. Tom Jones, Harry Belafonte, and Marlon Brando had also written to Elvis, and their letters helped fill in some of the gaps. Carmen found out that these famous men were more than just acquaintances. They were close friends who shared deep secrets and helped each other out. This was a side of celebrity life that the public never saw. For example, Marlon Brando and Elvis were best friends, which was surprising because Marlon had once said mean things about Elvis in the tabloids. Carmen thought about just publishing the letters as they were, but she realized that adding her own commentary and organizing them properly would make the book much more valuable. She needed a writer who could do this, and she met one at a dinner party. He was a charming and successful author and screenwriter who seemed perfect for the job. Meanwhile, in 1974, Robert Slatzer was making waves with his book about Marilyn Monroe. Slatzer claimed he had secretly married Marilyn in Mexico, but the marriage was dissolved under pressure from a powerful Hollywood executive. This story made Slatzer famous, even though many people doubted it. He went on to write more celebrity biographies, and Carmen thought his experience and connections could be perfect for the Elvis project. Slatzer was excited to work on the Elvis letters, and introduced Carmen to a literary agent named Andrew Ettinger. They signed a deal, and the project seemed to be moving forward. But Slatzer had personal issues that slowed his progress. He was having financial problems, and wasn't making much headway on the book. Carmen and her partner, Bill Mack, a collector of celebrity memorabilia, decided to step in and help. Bill bought out the agent's contract and became the new literary agent, taking a bigger stake in the project. Despite the support, Slatzer still wasn't making progress. Carmen and Bill brought in a new writer to help, but Slatzer's drinking and unreliable behavior made collaboration difficult. After a week of trying to work together, it became clear that Slatzer wasn't going to be able to finish the book. The new writer had to take over, but Slatzer's name would still be on the book. While working on the book, the writer discovered a surprising claim in one of Elvis's letters: "Vernon is not my real father." This was a shocking revelation because Vernon Presley was known as Elvis's father and one of his closest confidants. Elvis had told Carmen Montez, a friend, that his real father was a man named Virgil, who was Vernon's twin brother. The writer dug into the Presley family history to try to find out if this was true. The Presley family tree goes back to 1886, when J.D. Presley, Elvis's grandfather, was born. J.D. was the son of Rosella Presley and an unknown father. J.D. had at least 3 brothers, but the family records were incomplete. The writers searched for any mention of a Virgil Presley, but found nothing. It seemed that if Virgil had ever existed, his story had been lost to time. The mystery of Elvis's parentage added another layer of intrigue to the book, making the project even more compelling. Carmen and the writer knew they had a lot of work ahead of them, but the potential for a groundbreaking book about Elvis Presley was too exciting to ignore. The story of Elvis Presley's family is a web of confusion, with records that are often inaccurate or missing. One of the biggest mysteries revolves around J.D. Presley, Elvis's grandfather, and his family. J.D. was a man of many secrets and a few lies, which have left historians and genealogists scratching their heads. J.D. was known for his wild ways from a young age. He left school at 11 to take odd jobs, and by 17, he had developed a reputation as a ladies' man and a troublemaker. He married Minnie Mee Hood, who was 8 years older than him, and they had at least 6 children together. Among them were daughters Nashville, Delta Mee, and Gladys Erline, as well as sons Vernon and Vester. Elvis believed there was a third son, Virgil, who was supposedly Vernon's twin brother. However, there is no solid evidence to support this claim. J.D. and Minnie Mee's marriage was far from ideal. J.D. was known for his striking good looks and carefree attitude, but he was also a spendthrift. He squandered the dowry Minnie Mee brought into the marriage and often found himself in the town jail, usually due to his drinking and carousing. Despite his reputation, he always managed to dress impeccably, leading many to speculate that his stylish wardrobe was funded by illegal activities, like making or running moonshine. After 30 years of marriage and at least 6 children, J.D. decided to leave Minnie Mee. He claimed she had deserted him, but Minnie Mee wrote to his lawyer, stating that he was the one who had abandoned her. Despite her protest, the judge granted J.D. the divorce. Soon after, J.D. remarried, this time to Vera Leftwich. In an attempt to cover his tracks, he changed his last name from Presley to Presley, adding to the confusion in the family's records. J.D. brother, Noah, also contributed to the family's tangled history. Noah married Susan Griffith and took her 3 existing sons, Whitford, Eekford, and Sumter, as his own. This created a complex family tree, with some descendants considering Noah to be their grandfather. Noah's youngest brother, Joseph Warren Presley, mysteriously disappeared from the 1910 census and reappeared in the next one, adding another layer of mystery to the family's history. One of the most tragic stories in the Presley family involves J.D.'s daughter, Dixie. She contracted syphilis and, left untreated, became mentally unstable. The family was so ashamed that they essentially erased her from their history. Dixie was secretly moved to a mental ward in Jackson, and her existence was never acknowledged by her family again. This deep-seated shame and secrecy have made it even harder for researchers to piece together the true story of the Presley family. The story of Elvis's birth is also shrouded in mystery. Many sources claim that Elvis was born on January 8, 1935, at noon, but according to Dr. Bill Hunt's detailed notes, Elvis was actually born at 4:35 a.m. on that cold January morning. Dr. Hunt was called to the Presley home because Gladys was having a difficult labor and losing a lot of blood. The first baby, Jessie Guerin, was stillborn. 35 minutes later, Elvis was born. The family never paid for Dr. Hunt's services, and welfare covered the $15 bill. Gladys's recollections of the birth were often distorted. She claimed that Elvis was born first, and that Jessie died because the doctor was too focused on saving Elvis. This version of events deeply affected Elvis, who lived his life with a sense of guilt over his brother's death. However, Dr. Hunt's notes clearly state that Jessie was born first and was stillborn, and Elvis was born second and alive. The official records of Elvis's birth are filled with errors. Dr. Hunt misspelled Jessie's middle name as Garian instead of Guerin, and he spelled Elvis's first name as Ivis without the L. On the birth certificate, Elvis's father, Vernon, lied about his age, listing it as 20 instead of 18, and made Gladys 1 year younger than she actually was. These discrepancies have made it difficult to separate fact from fiction in the Presley family's history. Elvis's belief that his father was Virgil, Vernon's twin brother, adds another layer to the mystery. Elvis claimed that Virgil was a railroad conductor and part-time evangelist, and that he remembered attending church meetings with Virgil and Gladys. According to Elvis, Virgil fell off a moving train and died when Elvis was very young. Vernon then moved in to help, and Elvis called him Daddy because he liked it. However, there is no concrete evidence to support the existence of Virgil, and some believe that Elvis's memories were influenced by the stories his mother told him. The theme of twins continued to play a significant role in Elvis's life. His mother's great-grandmother had twins, and his wife, Priscilla, had twin half-brothers. Even in his professional life, Elvis often worked with twins, from the comedy sketch on the Milton Berle show to the twin characters in his movies. These recurring themes of twins may have been a way for Elvis to cope with the loss of his own twin brother and the family secrets that surrounded his birth. The Presley family's history is a complex tapestry of truth and fiction, with many threads that are difficult to untangle. The records are often incomplete or misleading, and family secrets have been carefully guarded. Despite the confusion, the story of Elvis Presley's family is a fascinating exploration of human nature, the impact of family dynamics, and the power of memory. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, found himself in a tricky situation when he was caught in a forgery scam. Vernon, along with his friends Leather Gable and Travis Smith, tried to alter a check from Orville Bean, a local farmer and Vernon's landlord. They changed the amount from $4 to $40, but Bean quickly noticed the trick. The three men were caught and faced serious charges. The news of their arrest made the local papers, though they spelled Vernon's last name wrong, calling him Presley instead of Presley. Leather and Travis were bailed out by their families, but Vernon stayed in jail. His own father, J.D. Presley, didn't even try to get him out. Instead, it was Vernon's father-in-law, Jesse, who helped bail Travis out. With the odds against them, Vernon and his friends changed their pleas to guilty. They were each sentenced to 3 years in Parchman Farm, a harsh prison in Mississippi. Parchman was more like a labor camp, where prisoners worked in chain gangs under the watch of strict guards. Vernon and Travis both experienced the brutality of the prison, including being whipped with a leather belt called Black Annie. These scars stayed with them for life. While Vernon was away, his wife, Gladys, and their young son, Elvis, were thrown out of their home by Bean. Gladys moved in with relatives and struggled to make ends meet. She often turned to drinking to cope with the hard times. When Vernon was finally released from prison, he found Gladys in poor health, her once beautiful hair now gray and her face marked by dark circles. Elvis, who was just a boy at the time, was overjoyed to have his father back. But the memory of Vernon's time in prison was a painful one for Elvis. He never talked about it at home, and later in life he tried to keep it a secret. Some say that Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, used this information to control both Elvis and Vernon. Elvis's family background was complex and often troubled. He believed he had Native American ancestry, which was important to him. His great-great-great-grandmother, Mourning Dove, was a full-blooded Cherokee. This heritage influenced Elvis's sense of identity and his spirituality. He often referred to himself as having an Indian sixth sense, and his costumes in later years featured Native American motifs. Elvis's family history also influenced his acting. In the movie Flaming Star, he played a character who was part white and part Indian, much like his own great-great-grandfather, John Mansell. Elvis felt a deep connection to this role, and it allowed him to explore his own feelings about being an outcast. Despite the challenges, Elvis's family remained a central part of his life. He was deeply afraid of losing anyone, which is why he kept his friends and relatives close. For Elvis, family was everything, and he constantly sought stability in a world that often felt unstable. Years later, while researching Elvis's family tree, a breakthrough was made. A website called WikiTree.com revealed that Virgil Presley, a brother of Vernon, was indeed a real person. This discovery added another layer to the complex and often mysterious history of the Presley family. It showed that Elvis's stories, while sometimes exaggerated, were rooted in real family history. The story of the letters is a puzzle with many pieces, and we've been looking at them from every angle to see if they can fit together or if some parts just don't match. We've talked about the credibility of recollections and how tricky it can be to trust what people remember, especially when it comes from a third party. We've seen how even books, like Kathleen Tracy's Elvis Presley, a biography, can be a mix of first-hand, second-hand, and third-hand stories, all based on memory and not always backed up by written records. When it comes to Carmen Montez's letters, we've been lucky to have some actual written documents letters in Elvis Presley's own handwriting. These letters are like a treasure, but they also come with a big question mark. Are they really from Elvis, or are they fakes? To answer this, we turn to experts in handwriting analysis. One of the top experts, Charles Sachs from the Scriptorium in Beverly Hills, looked at the letters. He's known for catching fake documents, like the fake will of Howard Hughes. After studying the letters, Sachs said they were definitely written by Elvis Presley. He compared them to known samples of Elvis's handwriting and found them to be a match. But even with an expert's word, we wanted to be sure. My mother, Elaine, who is also a handwriting expert, looked at the letters. She didn't have a proven sample of Elvis's handwriting, but she compared the letters to the samples Sachs used. She agreed that the letters were written by the same person who wrote those samples. We also had letters from Marlon Brando, and Sachs said they were genuine too. However, some of these letters had unusual parts where Brando supposedly became possessed by spirits. My mother found that these spirit parts were written by two different people, not Brando. This was a big red flag, but it didn't mean the rest of the letters were fake. It just meant that some parts might have been added by others. So we asked ourselves, why would someone fake these letters? The most common reasons are to make money or to gain fame. But Carmen Montez, who received the letters, never tried to sell them or tell anyone about them. She kept them a secret, even from her friends and family. Her ex-husband, George, didn't know about them either. If the letters were a way to make money, it seems like Carmen lost interest or got discouraged. We also thought about who else might have faked the letters, but we couldn't come up with a good reason. No one has benefited from them, and no one had the opportunity to make money from them except Carmen, who passed away. The next question was how someone could fake so many letters. It's not just a few letters or a forged signature. It's nearly 300 handwritten documents, some sent by mail, others delivered by courier. The postmarks on the letters date from 1966 to 1972, and they all have to look real. Faking that many letters would be a huge job, and it's hard to imagine someone going to all that trouble only to keep the letters hidden. After looking at all the evidence, we believe the letters are genuine. The handwriting matches, and there's no clear reason or method for faking them. But we know that some might still be skeptical. That's okay. The letters are a part of history, and whether you believe in their authenticity or not, they tell a fascinating story about the lives of these famous people and the woman who received their words. In the end, the letters are a reminder that sometimes the truth is just as mysterious as the stories they tell.